And it was basically taking time out of your day to identify what's really going on in your life, what issues you're dealing with, and to just basically like pray about each individual thing and to see and ask God what it is that He wants you to do with those things. And today's topic is going to be stopping the stress speak. So what I'm going to talk about today is King Jehoshaphat, and basically what he went through as a king, and then what he did while hardships came his way, and what we can learn from this and take so that we can stop stressing less and like live more peaceful lives. So I'm gonna read Second Chronicles chapter 20, and before I read that, I'm just gonna give you guys like a little context of Jehoshaphat. So he was the king of Judah. When he became king, he was only 35 years old. So what sets him apart from many of the kings of, of Judah was that he was a king that sought God and obeyed his commandments. He wasn't led astray by the evil examples and influences of the kings of Israel. And he didn't seek idols like the kings of Israel did. He was actually like actively trying to stop idol worship and in his lands by appointing judges throughout the nation. So when he was appointing these judges, he created a justice system which brought stability and more order to his lands. And it was basically like a system that helped solve any disputes that people had, like if they were disobeying the law, or if they had any disputes among each other, then they would be dealt with in a divine manner and also in a civil manner. So that, like I said before, this system strengthened Judah and it made it more stable. So because Jehoshaphat was a king that sought God and obeyed his commands, he was someone that he was truly blessed. In his kingdom, he had a really big army, he had strong fortresses, and he was really wealthy. All the nations that were around Judah, like the neighboring nations, they respected him, and they even like showered him with a bunch of gifts. And also, of course, they were in alliance with him. So Jehoshaphat had divine favor because he followed and he sought God's heart, or he sought God, and he obeyed his commands. So that's why he was truly blessed with everything that he had in his kingdom. One thing, though, despite all this blessings and everything that, on paper it seems like Jehoshaphat's like a really nice person, that he did everything that that he was supposed to do. But one thing that he did mess up and something that he faltered on was he made an alliance with the kingdom of Israel at the time. So by doing that, he basically he married his son to the daughter of Jezebel. And many of you know Jezebel was a really beautiful woman, and she's someone that used her beauty to make her people in her kingdom worship idols. And one of the idols is Baal. And so that's where that allegiance was a mistake, because even though he was blessed with so many things, the next thing he wanted was that he was really ambitious for power. So that's why he sought to make an allegiance with Israel, because they were another kingdom that was really powerful, and then that they could share their resources, their armies, and all the wealth that they had. And basically, anyone that wanted to disrupt or harm the kingdom, they would all work together, and that they would have these two kingdoms fighting against any third party. So if we a little more about Jehoshaphat, when he actually went to battle with the king of Israel, and while they were doing this battle, the king of Israel ended up dying. He got shot. He got shot in the side with an arrow, and so since he died, the relationships with Israel obviously didn't end that well. So his allegiance wasn't there, and he didn't have the support of Israel for what was going to come. So after the battle, Jehoshaphat appointed judges across all of Judah, and it brought peace and stability to the kingdom. And it was also something that really pleased God, because it showed that he was making an effort to try to get his people to follow and obey God's law, and basically to not sin against him. And if anyone would violate the law, they would deal with them in a civil manner and try to. He wouldn't necessarily punish them for disobeying God and sinning against him. He would just encourage them to not do those things. So all of this context with Jehoshaphat now brings us to 2 Chronicles chapter 20. So if you could please go to 2 Chronicles chapter 20. And it's going to show up on the screen. Okay. So it says, after this, so this is after he appointed the judges to Judah, and he implemented the justice system. So it says, after this, the armies of the Moabites, Ammonites, and some of the Meunites declared war on Jehoshaphat. Messengers came and told Jehoshaphat, a vast army from Edom is marching against you from beyond the Dead Sea. They are already at Hazazon Tamar. This was another name for En-Gedi. So we could stop right there. So right off the bat, we already see and we find out that there are 3 different armies that are going to attack, and they declared war on Judah. They declared war on Jehoshaphat. And it says in verse 2 that they're already on their way. So like I mentioned, or have been mentioning in my past the past 2 messages that I've brought, when hardships come our way, we often ask ourselves, or in this case, Jehoshaphat's asking himself, why is everyone coming against me? Why is everyone turning on me? Why is there war? And in these moments of despair, we ask ourselves these questions too, like, why is this happening? Why isn't this going my way? What could be, is there a reason why you could say, like, I'm being punished, or just things aren't going my way? So I gave the context of what Jehoshaphat has gone through so that we can maybe like see and answer why it is that this is happening to him. So the first one was he made the allegiance, he made an alliance with, not allegiance, he made an alliance with Israel, which is something that it obviously didn't please God, because he was being involved with people that worshipped idols. So one could say to themselves, maybe God's punishing me because I sinned, because I did something wrong. Maybe this is happening to me. And one example, or something that came to my attention, was that we tell ourselves, sorry, okay, I'll just go to the next thing. I don't know why I wrote that. But for the next thing was, he pleased God by appointing all the judges in Judah, and he was doing something that was correct in God's eyes. And you could say to yourself, maybe this bad thing is happening to me because I'm doing what God wants me to do. Because I'm doing something good, maybe Satan's putting something in my path to bring me down. So that's another question that we might ask ourselves. And then obviously there's the third thing where we just don't know why things are happening, and we probably never might know the reason why certain things are happening. So if we go back to the verses, we go to verse 3. It says, Jehoshaphat was terrified by this news and begged the Lord for guidance. He also ordered everyone in Judah to begin fasting. So obviously Jehoshaphat knew that all these armies were against him, and he didn't have any allies at the time that could help support him, so he was basically left all alone, and he was getting surrounded from all sides. And he was scared, like, how could you not be scared that you don't have any support, and you're given this news like in a day's notice, and you're told that it's like you're not told that it's going to come, you're told that it's already happening, and you don't have time to prepare, you don't have time to plan, and you just everything seemed that it was going okay, and now like you're just hit with like terrible news. So he cried out to God, and he ordered everyone to do the same. So yeah, it says Jehoshaphat was terrified, and he begged the Lord for guidance. So the first thing, I'm sure that he went through a lot of stress and time, and it's not specified how long he was like in anguish or in despair, but something positive and something good that he did was that he turned to God and he started asking him for guidance. And he also, it says that he ordered everyone in Judah to do the same thing. So we had the king praying to God, and we also had the rest of the kingdom of Judah also doing the same thing. So if we go to the next verse, it says, so people from all the towns of Judah came to Jerusalem to seek the Lord's help. So that's what I said before. All the people of Judah were coming to God and asking him for help. So it says, Jehoshaphat stood before the community of Judah and Jerusalem in front of the courtyard of the temple of the Lord. He prayed, O Lord God of our ancestors, you alone are the God who is in heaven. You are the ruler of all the kingdoms of the earth. You are powerful and mighty. No one can stand against you. So here we see, here in Jehoshaphat's prayer, he's standing in front of his people in a courtyard. And one thing that I notice is that he's crying out to God, or he's praying to God in front of all these people. And the first thing that he's doing is that he's saying, and he's like reminding to God, he's talking to God, and he's telling him how great he is, how awesome and mighty his power is, and all the things that he's done before. And he's recognizing like the hierarchy, like God is above everything, and he has power to do absolutely anything. And I was reminded too, basically from what I've shared with you all, that I was reminded that God, I'm reminded of all that God has done and what he's delivered me from. And it's not because God doesn't know who he is that, so basically in this prayer, when we're talking to God and we're reminding him of everything that he is and all that he's done, it's not because God doesn't know who he is, because obviously he knows who he is and he knows what he's done. We do it because we kind of remind ourselves, and when we say it out loud, we believe more of what we're saying. And something that I was doing these past couple of weeks when I was going through situations is like crying out to God and saying these things aloud. I did believe more in his word. I did believe more in what he was telling me. And we've come to church all these years, and we're told, by pastor and by other leaders through all these messages, we're told of how great and awesome God is, how loving he is, and everything that he'll do for us. And saying these words, saying these things out loud in a prayer to God, it helps you believe more, and it helps you stay grounded in everything that's going on. So verse 7 says, "O God, did you not drive out those who lived in this land when your people Israel arrived? Did you not give this land forever to the descendants of your friend Abraham?" So this part right here, you could go back. This part right here, "And did you not give this land forever to the descendants of your friend Abraham?" So as many of you know, one of the promises that God made to Abraham was that he promised him a land, and he was going to be fruitful, and he was going to have descendants to the point where like it wasn't going to be able to. He was going to have so many kids and so many generations after him that they would be more than all the stars in the sky in the galaxy. And this is something I'm not sure how long it is between Abraham and Jehoshaphat, but it shows that this promise that God gave to Abraham is something that's been carried on through generations. And him saying this in the prayer, it just reaffirms that God is completing the promise, and he's holding true to what he said all those generations ago. So verse 8 says, "Your people settled here and built this temple to honor your name." Go to the next verse as well, verse 9. "They said, whenever we are faced with any calamity, such as war, plague, or famine, we can come to stand in your presence before this temple where your name is honored. We can cry out to you to save us, and you will hear us, and you will rescue us." So when we cry out to God, when we pray to him, he's going to hear us. Like, he is there to hear us. But the key thing is continuous prayer, and it's something that I've been mentioning over these past couple weeks, is that we have to continuously come to God and pray to him with our situations, with our problems, with our burdens. We come to God and we continuously ask him to deliver us from whatever it is we're going through, whatever hardships we're going through, that he just helps us. And there's a Bible verse that says, "Seek and you will find, ask and you shall receive, knock and the door will be open to you." The key is just continuous prayer. Because yes, we can come to God and pray to him one time, and he might, in all his mercy and all his grace, he might answer that prayer to us. But what he really wants is for us to come to him and to build a relationship with him, and to get to know him more and to fall in love with him. So verse 10 says, "And now we see what the armies of Ammon, Moab, and Mount Seir are doing. You would not let our ancestors invade those nations when Israel left Egypt. So they went around and they did not destroy them. Now see how they reward us, for they have come to throw us out of your land, which you gave us in inheritance. O our God, won't you stop them? We are powerless against this mighty army that is about to attack us. We do not know what to do, but we are looking to you for help. So in this verse, this is a moment where Jehoshaphat's he has a moment of surrender. He realizes the place that he's in, the position that he's in, and he knows that he can't do anything to save himself. He can't do anything to protect his kingdom. Like, in the position he is, he's a king. And he knows that he doesn't have any allies and he doesn't have the right resources to defend himself. Not only himself, but like the rest of his people. I'm sure as a king, and from what we can see from Jehoshaphat's story and his background, is that he really wants to protect his people and to take care of everyone. And when you're given this news, you feel like you won't be able to do anything to help everyone. And that can be really stressful and really overwhelming for someone in his position, that he has all these things that he has to worry about, but he can't really do anything to protect all of it and to resolve the issues. So again, I keep in mind that that while Jehoshaphat's saying this, he's saying it to his people. He's saying it out in public. And one thing that we see from that is that he's being vulnerable to himself in front of all his people, or everyone that's in his courtyard, because not the whole kingdom is there. But he's being vulnerable in front of a group of people. And that to me shows that being able to do that really shows like strong character, and that you're able to, whatever's going on in the situation, you're able to the situation, it doesn't have you chained down. Like it doesn't have a foothold on you, and you're able to deal with it, and you're able to grow from it and overcome it, which is really important. So this being able to speak in front of a group of people, it really shows good character, and it shows how grounded he was in trusting in God and believing in his word, in his promises that God was going to protect the land that they were inhabiting. So if we go to the next verse, it says, all the men of Judah stood before the Lord with their little ones, wives, and children. The Spirit of the Lord came upon one of the men standing there. His name was Jahaziel, son of Zechariah, son of Benaniah, son of Jael, son of Mattaniah, a Levite who was the descendant of Asaph. He said, listen, all you people of Judah and Jerusalem. Listen, King Jehoshaphat. This is what the Lord says. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged by this mighty army, for the battle's not yours, it's God's. The battle isn't ours, but God's. And being able to say this is really reassuring, because we know that God doesn't put us through anything that he knows we can't handle. And as I've mentioned in past messages, what God really wants is everything that we go through is for our own good. He wants our best interests. It may not be something that we agree with or something that we like at the moment, but if we see it from a different perspective, like an elevated perspective, or like an eagle eye point of view, we can kind of see the events that go on in our lives, and we can say, oh wow, like I didn't realize this in the moment, but now God, I realize that you did this so I could grow, or you permitted this to happen so I could gain something. You allowed this or you closed this door so that something better could come in the future. So as soon as we change our perspectives, what once was a big problem, like we see here, what once was a mighty army, it now just seems like a few people, and it's not that big of an issue anymore. Verse 16 says, tomorrow, so again, this is Jahaziel like speaking to the people and to King Jehoshaphat. It's a word that came to him from the Lord. So he continues saying, tomorrow, march out against them. You will find them coming up through the ascent of Ziz at the end of the valley that opens up into the wilderness of Jeruel. And he says, but you will not even need to fight. Take your positions, then stand and watch the Lord's victory. He is with you. O people of Judah and Jerusalem, do not be afraid or discouraged. Go out against them tomorrow, for the Lord is with you. So one thing that I noticed while reading these two verses, Jahaziel says to the king, go out, march tomorrow, like prepare to fight, but don't fight. Don't draw a weapon, don't shed any blood, just go out and march tomorrow. And he says to go out and to sing tomorrow. And a king hearing these words knowing what you're supposed to do in war, you kind of like take a step back and you're confused because you're like, how am I supposed to protect people? How am I supposed to defend this attack that's coming my way if you're telling me to not attack the enemy and not defend myself? And what I noticed while reading these two verses was that the Lord becomes greater when things don't make sense. When God's plan seems illogical, it makes and it leaves room for a bigger miracle. And we see that in many examples in the Bible. Gideon's one of them. He was told to keep reducing the number that he had in his army, and he only ended up with 300 people. And we also have another example where things seem illogical, but it ended up becoming something great, and it ended up being a miracle, was Jesus multiplying the food, and another one was that he was walking on water. So we just see examples across the Bible where situations just seem completely illogical and it makes no sense of it, but somehow, some way, God makes a miracle and God works in the situation, and then something big and something just amazing is produced from it. So we go to the verse 18. So I believe at this point he's finished. Jahaziel's finished saying what the Lord brought to him, and it says, King Jehoshaphat bowed low with his face to the ground, and all the people of Judah and Jerusalem did the same, worshiping the Lord. So I'm not sure if it specifies here what Jehoshaphat's reaction was to the word that Jahaziel said to him, but from what I take from this was that the first thing that Jehoshaphat did was that he got down and he prayed to God. So we go to the next verse as well. Then the Levites from the clans of Kohath and Korah stood to praise the Lord, the God of Israel, with a very loud shout. Early in the next morning, the army of Judah went out into the wilderness of Tekoa. On the way, Jehoshaphat stopped and said, Listen to me, all you people of Judah and Jerusalem. Believe in the Lord your God, and you will be able to stand firm. Believe in his prophets, and you will succeed. After consulting the people, the king appointed singers to walk ahead of the army, singing to the Lord and praising him for his holy splendor. This is what they sang. Give thanks to the Lord. His faithful love endures forever. So he did end up doing what Jahaziel said for him to do. He went out, he took his army, they went to march out, and he appointed people to sing. And what they did was they sang, and they kept singing, Give thanks to the Lord, his faithful love endures forever. And he told his people, and he reaffirmed his people, he said, stand strong because the Lord is with us. And I think it was really great that they all trusted in him to be able to do that. Because I'm sure if the king had doubts of what they were going to do, then I'm sure that the soldiers themselves have doubts, because they're the ones saying, we're the ones that are going to be on the front line and laying down our lives to protect the kingdom. How are we just going to go and sing and expect the armies, or expect us to have the victory that God promised us? So thankfully, it says that they sang, Give thanks to the Lord, for his faithful love endures forever. So that's what they kept singing over and over and over again. Verse 22 says, At the very moment they began to sing, and give praise. The Lord caused the armies of Ammon, Moab, and Mount Seir to start fighting among themselves. The armies of Moab and Ammon turned against their allies from Mount Seir and killed every one of them. After they had destroyed the army of Seir, they began attacking each other. So when the army of Judah arrived at the lookout point in the wilderness, all they saw were dead bodies lying on the ground as far as they could see. Not a single one of the enemy had escaped. So we see here that God completed his word. What he told Jahaziel and what he told to King Jehoshaphat, it was completed. He remained faithful to what he said he was going to do. He remained faithful to the people of Judah. He protected their lands, and they didn't even have to shed blood. They didn't have to raise a single weapon. All they did was sang and they gave praise to God. So we can finish out the rest of this chapter. It says, King Jehoshaphat and his men went out to gather the plunder. They found vast amount of equipment, clothing, and other valuables, more than they could carry. This was so much plunder that it took them 3 days to collect it all. On the fourth day, they gathered in the valley of blessing, which got its name that day because of the people praised and thanked the Lord there. And it is still called Valley of Blessing today. Then all the men returned to Jerusalem with Jehoshaphat leading them, overjoyed that the Lord had given them victory over their enemies. They marched into Jerusalem. They marched into Jerusalem to the music of harps, lyres, and trumpets, and they proceeded to the temple of the Lord. When all the surrounding kingdoms heard that the Lord himself had fought against the enemies of Israel, the fear of God came over them. Is there one more verse in the chapter? Or one more verse? Oh, no? Okay. Okay, verse 30. So Jehoshaphat's kingdom was at peace, for his God had given him rest on every side. And we could stop right there. So as you could see, the aftermath of the battle, the so-called battle that they had, they ended up picking up all the equipment that was left by the dead bodies. God completed his word. He told them that if they sang and they praised God in the battle while they marched, that he was going to give them the victory, that they didn't even have to shed any blood, they didn't do any violence, that God was going to take care of it. All they had to do was trust in him and complete the commandment that he gave them. And as we see, it says in this last verse that God gave him rest on every single side. So all of Jehoshaphat's problems of all these kingdoms coming and attacking him, it was all resolved, and he was at peace. So from what we could take from this story of Jehoshaphat is that if we abide in God, if we abide in his presence and his word, then he will abide in us. If we remain, he will remain faithful to us if we're faithful to him. And like I said before, God won't put us through anything that he knows we can't handle. So one of the things that we can do and we could take from this to stay out of a so-called stress mode is to change our vocabulary and how we describe certain situations. So if we can go to the next slide. Can I get one volunteer? One volunteer? Okay, Haley. Can you tell me the difference between those two sentences? Well, not the words, obviously, but yeah. What do you think is different from them? There you go. Yeah. So what Meredith said is that the sentence on the top, it says, I have to run to the store. And the one on the bottom says, I'm going to the store. And she said that the one on the top seems more urgent than the one on the bottom. We could go to the next slide. And for the next couple of slides, it's the same overall theme, and they're just different examples. So the first one says, I'm going to jump in the shower. I'm going to jump in the shower. The next one says, I'm going to take a shower. So obviously, the one on the top, the person in situation seems more urgent and more stressed out, or it's more urgent for them to take a shower, and then the one on the bottom seems a little bit more relaxed. And then the next slide as well. It says, I'll hurry over before the game starts. Again, this is like stress-oriented, and it's more urgent. And the one on the bottom says, I'll be over before the game starts. It's a little bit more relaxed and more low-key. Okay, so I'm gonna stay right there. So all of these stress-oriented phrases imply a sense of urgency, like Meredith said. And it kind of says, it's kind of like, oh, this needs to happen, or I need to be there, or this needs to get done right away. If we change how we describe these situations or our situations that we're going through, we can subconsciously begin to stress less because we won't exaggerate the magnitude of an issue that's going on. You could go back. So yeah, like I said, if we start changing these little words and stop describing these situations as urgent, then we can subconsciously begin to start being in a more relaxed environment, in a more relaxed mode. So when we're faced with adversity, we try to become more solution-oriented instead of stress-oriented. The first thing that we can do, and it's something that we read and we understand from Jehoshaphat's story, is come to God and ask him for guidance. He will, yeah, we come to him, ask him for guidance, and he's going to direct our path. The verse that I really like is, seek God's kingdom first and everything else will follow. And as we see in the story that we just read, he came to God, he cried out to him, he reminded himself of who God is, of what he's done, how great and how awesome he is. And he asked, or he was reminded of a promise that God gave to Abraham generations ago. And it still holds true to this day. It still holds true. And he just came to him and he just gave him all of his problems. He knew that he was going to be attacked with all these armies coming all his way. He knew that he didn't have support. He knew that he didn't have the essential resources to take on this problem. But he gave it all to God, and God gave him a word. All he had to do was obey the word that God gave him, and the victory was his. And as we see, that's exactly what happened. God told him to go march into battle and just to sing and praise my name. And that's exactly what he did, and that's the victory that he was handed. So yeah, if we seek God's kingdom first, literally everything else will follow. Everything will come into place, and that's something that I've experienced these past couple weeks with everything I've been going through. At first I didn't turn to God with the issues I was dealing with, but as soon as I turned to him and I just prayed and I trusted in his word and I just completely trusted in that everything was going to turn out fine and that God would have my back, everything, or little by little, things would just start to fall into place. And then I could see, now I know why maybe this happened, or why I'm going through this situation at the moment. And obviously there's still some things that I don't know the answer to, and I don't know the reason why it's happening. But I continue to trust in God that everything's going to turn out fine, and that he has a perfect plan for my life and for everything that's going on right now. And I just, thankful to God that he wants me to grow and to mature and to just be a better. Whenever I pray to God, I usually say this to him, that you can continue, God, to change me and to help me grow into the man that you want me to become, into the child that you want me to become, into the servant you want me to become. And that's something that I kind of noticed these past couple of weeks, that everything that's happening is, I guess, for maturity, for growth, and just so that God can be glorified through the situation. So I'm going to end with this verse, Romans chapter 5. It's going to be verses 3 and 4. So it says, we can rejoice too when we run into problems and trials, for we know that they help us develop endurance. And endurance develops strength of character, and character strengthens our confident hope of salvation. So as we see here, we're reassured and we know that we can only grow and become better people, better children of God, better servants. We can only grow if we go through hardships. And as we see here, the hardships help us endure, or it just gives us endurance, and that endurance gives us better character, and that character makes us more confident in our salvation, more confident in our relationship with God, more confident in the things that we can say, the authority that God has given us to share his word and to cast out demons. We just become more confident in our relationship with him. And I urge you all to seek, when you go through hardships, to seek his presence. And when you come to him, ask him for peace, ask him for guidance. And we just thank him for all the love that he shows us, and we thank him for everything that he puts us through, because it is, at the end of it, it is for our best interests, and it is for our own good. And yeah, this was the theme. The topic for today was to stop the stress speak, and to just take another step into how we can live more solution-oriented lives and not worry so much about the hardships that we go through and over-exaggerate the magnitude of the situation. So I don't know if anyone has anything to say.